Okay, I'm going to talk about word building. Word building is a subject that I had to really remember what we did in my school to pass these because my kids were struggling with passing all the words. Here's page 1. When you open it up at the beginning of page 1, the kids need to read to you all this. They read to their supervisor. They read all these words. It gives you a great opportunity to make sure they know how to pronounce words. You know, the homeschooler problem. I saw a really cute video. Maybe I'll link it below. But a homeschooler video that was like, my problem isn't being social. My problem is pronouncing words correctly because I read so much. And I've just started noticing that in my kids a little bit, where they pronounce words that, even words that are spoken out loud, but they're not connecting it with the words they're reading. So this gives you a chance to listen to them read their words. Verse, this part I usually read to them, and then the comic strip they can read themselves. This is really important. This page you can refer to later if you need a whole list of the words. Then on the second page is the words, and on this age group, this is 1056. They have the word, how to pronounce it, and then a sentence. And the kids just copy the sentence. So that sentence they copy down here. It's a great chance to copy handwriting. Some of the grade in third grade they learn cursive. Fourth grade I make them write in cursive in English and word building for a whole year. And then in the other subjects, just if they start out in cursive, they have to write in cursive underneath that. So if this had an example in cursive, the rest of the page would be in cursive, except for its word building. So if this is fourth grade or level 4, they do it all in cursive. It just gives them a year to experience cursive, kind of get it down. And then after that, they can decide if they want to do print or cursive. I just ask that it's the whole thing for the whole page. If they want to do cursive the whole page, that's great. If they want to do print the whole page, that's great. Just I don't want them switching back and forth because it gets kind of confusing, and then they start doing half words in print, half words in cursive, and kind of like, no, we're not going to do that. Just choose one and stick with it. So at least for the whole page. I have them say these, so they spell it for me, and most of them have the definition, but since these don't, it would just say camp, and then you'd spell it out for me, and then I'd say drive, and they'd spell it out for me. That's at the beginning of the pace, and after every checkup they write down those. This is a little bit more extensive. Happy and Racer are sharing some rules, so I make my kids say this. So they would say a verb shows action. When we add er to a verb, we form a noun which names the one doing the action. Sometimes I'll say, okay, give me an example, and they'll say camper. You know, there's the word camp, but we add er and it shows somebody doing the action. Camper is someone who camps. And then down here they add er to words. Scripture verse that they fill in, it's in cursive. Fill that in every checkup you say a scripture verse before the checkup. Here's another rule. My kids do, there's some times where they're quoting stuff that I don't have them say as a rule. Usually they have to check with me. Sometimes it'll be a whole page. My son just did one in, I think it's 7th grade, that's talking about I think it's Latin roots or something like that, and it just talks about how I don't know, the Greeks or the French or something use apostrophes different. It was very interesting, not something that I felt like he needed to memorize, so I didn't make him do that. So as you go through the pace, there will be more comic strips. Love these things growing up. I know some of y'all think that they are just so silly, but my kids seem to love them. It's really interesting. It teaches great character, so if your kids hate them, just have them ignore it. But if not, there's a little lesson in some of them. I still remember, from kindergarten, some strips that talked about wags learning to obey and just different stuff. But I understand if your kid's starting these paces older, it's going to be a lot more goofy for them, especially when the kids' names are happy. Okay, so every checkup, this says to, on a separate piece of paper, write these 3 times, and then score them carefully and mark it if you spell them wrong. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be for memory. My kids were struggling with their self-test, so what I started is I give these to them verbally, and they just spell them back to me. And if they misspell it, they have to write it 5 times on another piece of paper. This went from flunking every self-test to passing every self-test. So just a piece there. I'm trying to get my mic out here. Just a piece there that seemed to really help for us. You do what you got to do. It seems to work really well if I do that and then make them say these. In word building, I don't always have them define it, but I know one of my children was having trouble with comprehension and what words really mean, so that worked really well, having her define these and go through them. Just kind of gave an extra reinforcement on what words mean. In some of the curricula, or in some of the word building, they have to look it up in a dictionary, and so there's a couple of different dictionaries. I'll share one at some point, but there's some that are easier than others. I was having my oldest kids do it with like a Webster's dictionary, and it was taking forever. And we were at the library one day, and I grabbed, like in the kids section, they had a dictionary. And I was like, hey, I'll just use this dictionary. It was amazing how fast they got done. So a kid dictionary is recommended for those. You can find the words in any dictionary, obviously. For me, it has to be an actual paper dictionary. We use my phone dictionary if we're out traveling and we forgot to bring the other one. But, 99% of the time we use a paper dictionary because that's really important. Again, the other thing about checkups is before they take the checkup, they need to say the verse. And then I usually sign the verse with my initials, so I know that they said it before they took it. Well, my son told me to tell you guys about the score strips. So when you get to a score strip, you're supposed to score the pages prior to that and that page. You put an X on here that says, I have scored it. And then you go back and you make corrections, and you put an X there if you have any corrections. You put an X in a pencil, red pen for scoring. So red X goes there, pencil goes there, red X goes there, says I have rescored, it is all correct. You X the page if you have mistakes, then you circle it with a red pencil or with a red pen, and that says, hey, mom or supervisor, whoever, everything on this checkup is correct. I have checked it, I've rescored it, everything is correct. So it just kind of is a little checklist, really good for some learners, really good for people that don't do checklist. It's great to get them, like, someday your boss is going to give you a list of things to do and you need to do it, so here's just your checklist. I'm not anal about this because it's for them. If they choose to use it, it's a great tool. If they choose not to use it, just as long as they're scoring their work and it all turns out really well when I score it. Anyway, I think that's about it on word building. I'm looking through and seeing they have some fun pages in here that you can find the words, just things to kind of reinforce the spelling words. When you get to the self-test, let me see if I can get this. When you get to the self-test, they have all the words. I give them a piece of paper where I have little numbers sectioned off on it, and they write down all of these words on a piece of paper, and then I let them score it, and they turn it into me. You can also get all of these word lists on Spelling City. If you go to spellingcity.com, there is a section that says you can sign up and buy it. Don't do that. Just go to the section where it says search word list and type in whatever, word building 1056. And when you type that in, it'll pull up a whole bunch of different schools that use it for ACE, and the word lists are already in there. It gets a little tricky when your word list gets a little bit longer because you'll have to pull up 2 lists, but if you don't have time to actually sit there and say every word to your kid, that is a lifesaver. I started using that last year, and the kids really enjoy. We've been taking typing. We do maybe speaking for typing, and so it allows them to actually practice their typing and lets them sit at the computer and use it, and it gives me a break. So, because I don't know about you guys, when I start giving these words, I start multitasking, and then I forget what word I was on, and then they have to tell me, and it just kind of gets messy. So sometimes I do this, and sometimes I do the other. If they seem to be struggling on the computer, I'll go back to this. So that's probably grades 3 and up that have those lists. In the younger grades, let me finish with this, sorry. Once you're done with the self-test, you check over it. The next day, they take the PACE test. The PACE tests are in the center of every PACE. That's a test that I put in my folders here, and along with the score keys that are in the score keys that you ordered, there's the answer key for the test in the center of this, so you have to pull it out. I put it in my folder. I'll have their test here. They bring me the folder when they're ready to test. I keep it next to me, and then I give them the test, and they can sit at. It's nice if you have another spot aside from their desk that they usually do their work. Kind of makes it a special day. They fill out the test. They don't have to score it. I score it with my folder, with all the score keys in here. And then in the back of my folder, I put their master chart. I'm going to do this on the computer this year, but I think I'm still going to keep it on their what's it called, master record sheet. I think I'll still keep it by hand and then transfer it to the computer so I don't have to figure out all the grades and calculate it up every quarter, because that is getting to be a lot. So for younger grades, this is 1007. This is when kids are just starting to kind of get sounds, reading a little bit. It has the same principle as a test in the middle. They have little reading pages in this. They don't have a first page to read. There's no My Goals page in this. Here is the words that they need to read to you. And I have them read that, and then down here I have them write it. If I have enough time, I have them read it again on here. Some of these are tricky, trying to figure out what they call these things. There was one that she was supposed to do the Y sound, and it was a boat. It looked a lot like that, and they had it highlighted as one of the answers, and I was like, I don't think boat has a Y sound. I realized it was yacht. Just looked a lot different than I ever pictured yachts. So obviously I'm not a boat expert. But with this young, there's no scripture verse in it yet on here. So, but there's still the checkup, so I just try to kind of treat it like, oh, it's a checkup. You get to do this all by yourself, write neat. And then they do that, and I check it, circle the bottom of the page or exit or whatever, and then they go on. So checkups are just kind of my kids see their older siblings taking checkups, and so it kind of gets exciting that they can have their turn to take a checkup, and then the older kids encourage them and say, hey, you did it, you did a checkup. So I think that's all I have for word building right now. I hope you guys enjoy this. Comment below anything else you guys want to know, or if this video stinks and I'm wasting my time, please comment on that as well. Open up to any suggestions, just trying to kind of show one way of doing it. Obviously there's many ways. I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't do it this way. I'm just trying to offer the way I do it so you guys have more options, I guess.